How did I get myself into this situation? I just wanted to review video games. What series of events led to me translating one of the most degenerate and inhumane stories in modern history? I'll tell you what. Me running my big mouth. For those unfortunate enough to be watching this video without knowing what the title refers to, about a year ago I introduced some of the stories in the books written by Kowloon Kurosawa, the person who made Hong Kong 97. One of them was so despicable that I jokingly said I would translate the whole thing and read it publicly if I ever got 1,000 subscribers. When you still only have 40 subscribers, 1,000 seems like this distant number that could never possibly happen. Well, the Hong Kong 97 history video propelled my channel from total obscurity to a healthy 10,000 subscribers, and as I should have guessed, people remember my promise and are expecting results. So, on this fine day, I would like to offer you my oral interpretation of Chasing Mr. Lolicon. This is a serious matter, and I've dressed appropriately. The pinnacle of the universe of pedophiles is something you could never dream of. Yes, made up of those who look at junior high school girls and say, well, she's just a bit too old. Welcome to the world of perverts who would shock even the Marquis de Sade. A man we'll call Tsujimura, who had been introduced by a mutual friend, had just arrived in Phnom Penh the previous week. The purpose of his trip was simply to take his pedophile life to the ultimate level. According to the person who introduced us, Tsujimura had a wife around his own age who he had met in high school during a paper route, and amazingly, she was accepting of his pedophilic tendencies. There sure are many types of people out there. Oh, my wife! She's really cooperative. When I want to take a picture of a girl, she'll talk to her first and mask what I'm doing. It was only recently Mr. Tsujimura caught wind of the shocking rumor that Cambodia had become the mecca for pedophiles. Traditionally, the Philippines and northern Thailand had been usual spots where dreams become reality for these types. But now, the promised land for all these old lolicons was none other than Phnom Penh. A little while back in the old town of Chiang Mai in northern Thailand, an incident involving several young girls had been picked up by all the tabloids and news shows in Japan, which led to a certain Mr. T taking his throne as the white supremacist king of the lolicon world. By now, he was operating out of Siem Reap in northern Cambodia, and even approaching 60, still kept a harem of fresh young girls within reach. When Tsujimura heard about all this, he probably couldn't control himself any longer. Recently, my wife has been saying she wants a child, but the thing is, if we ended up having a girl, I'm pretty sure that I would do something to her. So to get it all out of my system and make sure I don't have any regrets, I told my wife I would go to Asia and have sex with a little girl, and she's alright with that. As I listened to Tsujimura, I felt like my brain might be melting. But the reality was, in Cambodia there was a small syndicate trafficking in young girls from Vietnam, and if you had the money, 12-year-olds and even 10-year-olds were within reach. But the fact that this had become common knowledge itself was completely preposterous, and human rights activists from Europe had begun arriving last summer to investigate child prostitution. In a village of Vietnamese several kilometers away from Phnom Penh, which was famous around the world with these types, several men had been arrested for assaulting young girls, or sometimes young boys, since the end of last year. For some reason, they're always Caucasian. But no Japanese had been arrested. Yet. Even after telling Tsujimura about this, he didn't appear shaken at all, and proceeded to pull out $100 bills from his wallet, laying 10 on the table in front of us. $1,000 should be enough, right? Don't you think so? He said without a care. Was this guy really okay? That was just the kind of guy Tsujimura was. When the time came, he said to me, "Now, I'm going to catch a taxi to the notorious town on the outskirts and buy myself a virgin." With the sinful wad of cash in his pocket and breathing heavily from his nose, he said to me, "Why don't you come along to have a look for yourself?" This kind of opportunity doesn't come up often, so I begrudgingly bought my own ticket to hell and got into the taxi as Tsujimura requested. Now I was an accomplice. The taxi driver was a silent old Cambodian man. Usually, when you tell taxi drivers the name of this village, they'll give you a sort of cheeky smile and even wolf whistle. But after Tsujimura told him our destination 12 kilometers away, the driver remained expressionless, not even raising an eyebrow, and simply rustled his own nose hairs while hitting the gas. At the entrance to the village, a condom maker based in Phnom Penh had put up a 10-meter billboard with the inscription, "Make sure to use a condom," in 8 different languages. It goes without saying that the Japanese version was written in big, bold letters right in the center. As we entered the village, the street was lined on either side with brothels run by Vietnamese. The pink fluorescent lights, which were technically illegal in Phnom Penh, gave off their dubious glare. After the arrests of the German perverts and Australian lowlives, the girls in heavy makeup enticing customers in front of the shops were nowhere to be seen. But with the high demand for lolitas, mostly by the wealthy ethnic Chinese, the middle-aged ladies who run the shops would generally bring you a child if you knew how to ask. I can say so beyond a reason of a doubt, because Tsujimura proved it to me in front of my very eyes. After asking his preferred age, which I'll leave unsaid, the old lady, who had grown fat with the blood and tears of these young girls, laughed lightly and walked out of the shop. I found out from some of the other prostitutes at the same shop who were of a proper age that the old lady would set her sights on poor girls in the village, and after getting a request from a customer, would go to their home, haggle the price, and then halfway force them to come back with her. After nearly an hour passed and we were just about tired of waiting, the old lady showed up with a dirty smile on her face, and 2 young girls in hand. The 2 expressionless girls were around the age of Japanese school children who would still be wearing backpacks. While I was still in shock, the old lady told us, "Each of them are $600 a week, no bargaining." This seemed like an absurd price for a place like Cambodia, where the average middle-class salary was $40 a month. According to the old lady, prostitutes who had some mileage on them were much cheaper, but this was the going rate for virgins. Of course, for Tsujimura, who had brought $1,000, price wasn't an issue. "Well, it does seem like a good price, but, you see, I'm not interested in girls with any hair down there, so I want to make sure, how can I put it?" I suggested he try conveying his question with a picture, so he pulled out a notepad from his pocket, wrote 2 uppercase Y's, scribbled some black hair onto one of them, and wrote a question mark next to it. The woman looked at the picture and nodded her head in understanding. "Neither of them have any hair. If you think I'm lying, go ahead and take a look for yourself," she said confidently. I thought it was a joke, but as soon as Tsujimura heard it, his voice became deep like a tenor from Milan, and while avoiding eye contact, he whispered in Japanese, "You sure are cute. Come on and show me." With that, he took them by the hands and led them to the other room. 5 minutes later, Tsujimura came back with the slightly heavier girl who he had apparently chosen, paid the old lady, and with a huge grin, led the girl into the taxi he had waiting. Even the driver, who had shown no emotion before, couldn't hide his astonishment at the sight of the young girl. But he showed no intention of reprimanding us, and silently turned on the engine. Tsujimura put a perverted arm around the girl, who was visibly frightened, and in the same tenor voice started whispering something to her while petting her neck. Even though I thought I was more accustomed to depravity than the average person, this was getting to be a bit too much. There was no way I was going all the way to Tsujimura's hotel, so I got out halfway there, took a bike taxi home, and spent the rest of the day lifeless like a patient in a mental hospital. There is one small consolation at the end of all of this, which came several days later from Tsujimura, his face blue with anger. Apparently, the girl, who was still young enough to be wearing a backpack, wasn't a virgin after all. According to a taxi driver in Cambodia who was knowledgeable on prostitution, it wasn't uncommon for pimps at the Vietnamese brothels to sell girls as virgins a 2nd or 3rd time at the same price. It was his own fault, and I don't really understand it all myself. All I could do was drink my stale beer while imagining the look of disappointment on Tsujimura's face, and pray for that girl to have a healthy and happy future. Really, I mean it. Assuming this video doesn't get my channel taken down, I would like to thank the audience for attending this exposition on human filth, and take a moment to pray for all the white men from affluent countries sitting in Southeast Asian jails for sexual assault. Pray that they get their asses raped into oblivion. Good night.